I look for a much better effort back in the juvenile fillies.
And that's what's important. Do we have the same filly that we had going into a previous race?
Beautician, a half mile, 49 and 2. Also preparing this morning for the juvenile filly, Zilva. She was with her stablemate in this work. Both of them going a half mile. Zilva has Alice Clapham aboard, and then Dermot Fallon is aboard Smart Seattle. Keep in mind, Smart Seattle's preparing for the juvenile fillies turf. We're going to watch Zilva on the outside preparing for the juvenile fillies.
Yeah, they just work head-to-head together. We're only going 4 furlongs here, and I think this is a nice work. They've just shipped in their pretty fit fillies. You know, Zilva has run 4 times, Smart Seattle has run 3 times, and Graham Motion paired them up together here. He's not going to ask for a lot, Tom. He is going to give the riders the instructions. I want you to pair up, break away from the pole, and stay together, and that's exactly what they do. Everything is right. They make their lead changes correctly. They have a good way about them. Their hair coat is good. The condition is good. I mean, that's all you can learn from this work, really.
Well, you're stealing my thunder, because that's exactly what I was going to say. But when horses work in company, as opposed to working by themselves, usually the trainer is looking for something. In this case, I think that what Graham Motion is looking for is just a couple of horses to keep each other paying attention, and that's all. You'll notice as these 2 horses come down the lane, you'll have a difficult time judging who has more horse. That's because they both have a lot of horse left. Look at the riders' hands here. You're going to see they're both very quiet. Perhaps the horse on the inside carries their head a little bit higher, but that makes no never mind. These horses are ready to roll, and believe me, if either rider were to ask of Smart Seattle or Zilva, they would take off.
Yeah, if you worked them on their own, you'd have to probably ask them a little more to get the same amount of energy out of this work that they did in company. This way, they're doing it on the bridle, they're held together, and they finish up nicely. Nice work.
Zilva is credited with a time here, a half mile, 48 and 4, which would rank 32nd out of 60 at the distance. Zilva preparing for the juvenile fillies. Smart Seattle preparing for the juvenile fillies turf, also credited with a time of 48 and 4. So that's from the young girls. Now back to the big girls. Zenyatta. It's a very different question from what we tackled last night, in my opinion. The question that I asked all of you, Frank in the studio, Tom and Simon here, was where should Zenyatta go, the Ladies Classic or the Breeders' Cup Classic against the men? But let's look at it this way. Going to the Classic against the men, why does horse racing need Zenyatta to run in that race on Saturday?
Well, you can put it a lot of different ways, but the bottom line is this. The Europeans kicked our ass last year. And, you know, Zenyatta is probably the best horse in training right now, and you don't leave Tiger Woods in the barn when you're playing the Europeans in golf. And she is our Tiger Woods. We need her on Saturday to take on the Euros. We need bragging rights. Right now, we don't have those.
And I'll tell you why I think Zenyatta needs to go in the Classic. Horse racing cries year in, year out that it needs to be a mainstream sport. And the only way it can be a mainstream sport is by attracting the big names. Unfortunately, as far as pitch count goes, we're 0-2 right now because See the Stars is out, Rachel Alexandra is out. So we have only got Zenyatta left. That is the one string we are hanging on. We need her in the Classic because for the mainstream public, Frank, all they care about is really the Kentucky Derby and the Breeders' Cup Classic. They don't really understand what's going on in our world outside of those 2 races. Would you agree with that?
Well, that's right. And plus, Zenyatta is, I mean, she's America's horse that is running in the Breeders' Cup. And I think that, you know, that she's got to run there to bring the people out. They're going to want to see Zenyatta, but they won't want to see her in the Ladies' Classic because they're just going to expect her to do the same as she always does, just run by the field. But in the Breeders' Cup Classic, is the first time facing the boys, a mile and a quarter. I think it's all go. She's only got Rip Van Winkle ahead of her in the betting, and that's a European horse, and we don't know how he's going to run.
Well, in racing, the Breeders' Cup is racing's Ryder Cup. So, you know, it's us versus the Europeans, and I don't want to get beat.
Right,
I want to have my best horses out there.
I mean, to use the golf analogy, I mean, when we've got the US Open or the Masters, you don't want Tiger Woods sitting out on the bench. You don't want Phil Mickelson sitting out on the bench. The TV ratings drop, it becomes less appealing. Like I said, we are hanging with one strike left, and that is Zenyatta. This sport needs Zenyatta in the Classic, and I don't think it's over her head to do it. I think she has got the capability to get the job done.
And I think the connections realize that.
Yep.
I think the connections realize that, and I think they're making a gesture as much for themselves as they are for racing in general by running her in the Classic.
It's a big obligation, and one thing about the Breeders' Cup, the nationalism part about it makes it very, very special. Zenyatta could be carrying America's colors against the best on Saturday in the Men's Classic. When we return, we'll talk about more fillies and mares, this time Magical Fantasy and the turf. Happy Halloween, Giraffe Boy!
I know who that is.
There is no better place to wager on horse racing. There is no better event with which to wager than the Breeders' Cup World Championships, and there's no better time. Sign up now. Become a TVG account holder. Bet 50, get 50. You can do it at TVG.com or pick up the phone and call 1-888-PLAY-TVG. You must be 21 years or older and reside in a state where wagering services are available. It's often referred to as the Great Race Place, but you can put any adjective in there. Beautiful, majestic, it all applies. Oak Tree at Santa Anita, the site of the Breeders' Cup World Championships. Here's one of the great races that will be brought to you on Friday, November 6th, the Juvenile Fillies Turf. We take a look at the pre-entries.
Yeah, we've got some entries coming in from Europe, like Lily Langtree for Aidan O'Brien. Put together a nice win last time. Junior Tepsia for Peter Shergan in the colors of Team Valor. And then there's Tappett's Fly to the outside for trainer Dale Romans. Shows a lot of pace in her races, and she'll be laying close.
Frank, the work we're going to take a look at is this morning over the turf here at Santa Anita, 5 furlongs. Aaron Greider aboard Tappett's Fly.
Well, I am very impressed with this work. This is a daughter of Tappet, out of a mare by Marlin. Marlin won the Arlington Million, and this filly has had one start on the grass. That was in the P.G. Johnson Stakes at Saratoga. She was a gate-to-wire winner easily. Now remember, guys, last year Lara finished 3rd in this race, running a super race. She was by Tappet, and this filly reminds me of her. She also reminds me a bit of Stardom Bound, who was a winner on the card last year. And I just love the way she gets over the grass. This filly is just listening, waiting for instructions from the rider, and she just goes beautiful. I mean, look at the way she hits the ground. She does this effortlessly.
I'm with Frank on this work. You know, I put a star by her when I watched her before the show work. What I like, Frank, is this length of stride. I mean, that's a massive stride for the grass, and she's 1 for 1 on the turf. So you know she loves it. She's going to be disregarded. She's going to get a little bit of a price for us, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with both of you guys. We're all on the same page here. For people that aren't familiar with watching horses work, this is about as good a mover as you'll see. She is very, very fluid. I echo Frank's point. She reminded me of Stardom Bound, last year's champion 2-year-old filly, if you remember. And I thought this work was very, very impressive. She did it under no duress whatsoever and just cruised around there in a minute.
That's a great time, guys, on the grass. 1 minute and 3/5 around the dogs, and she did that effortlessly.
And for those just getting acquainted with the game, the dogs, those are those orange highway pylons out there, forcing the horse to work out in the middle of the course, saving part of the turf course. Tappett's Fly, 5 furlongs, 1 minute and 3/5. Aaron Greider as she prepares for the Juvenile Fillies Turf. So these are youngsters preparing for their big moment on the grass in Breeders' Cup World Championships days. We're preparing here on our set just off the winner's circle at Oak Tree at Santa Anita. I'm Todd Trupp alongside Simon Bray, one of the best trainers in the country, Tom Amos. We've got Frank Lyons in our TVG studios in Los Angeles, as well as Christine Oliveras. Let's move on to another division. So if you like the grass and you're a filly, you might grow up in one day being the Emirates Airline Filly and Mare Turf. And here's a look at the pre-entries for this year's division.
Yes, and it's going to be headed up by Forever Together, last year's champion. And then horses like Dare Me, Cross End of the Course, Dynaforce for Bill Mott, Midday, who will get a lot of support for the Europeans and Henry Cecil. And then there is Magical Fantasy, clearly the best of the West.